Do you want to learn the tools and strategies that can propel you to the next level in life? Do you want to understand how to maximize your fullest potential? Since 2001, Empower You has impacted and changed the lives of tens of thousands of people from around the world. And now we bring the life-changing experience to you. So welcome to the Empower You podcast with Brent Williams and Byron Dempsey, the podcast that delves into the ins and outs of the Empower You program and gives you a behind-the-scenes glimpse into what really goes on at these life-changing events.
This is Empower You, worst stories or best stories.
Yeah. Stories of recovery. I show a lot of scenes from movies that Empower You. One, because I'm a filmmaker, so it's an extension of my other passion in life. And two, because I always find that, movies, scenes carry metaphors and lessons. And the first scene we show is from Apollo 13. Have you seen Apollo 13?
I actually haven't seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, no.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it in...
It's one of the only movies I haven't seen that you show.
Well, we're launching Living Room Learnings again. And I've selected the 8 movies, and they're all Empower You movies. Karate Kid, Matrix, Apollo 13. So you'll have to watch that when we do it.
Yeah, for sure.
But for those of you who don't know the story, it's about the 13th launch to the moon. And the scene I show from the movie, I'll just give you a quick explanation, is shortly after takeoff, there's an explosion on the spaceship. And I'm pretty sure it's their guidance computer that's now malfunctioning. So the astronauts don't at this point know how to get home. Now, the scene that I show at Empower You is when NASA, the team on the ground, have just found out that this explosion has taken place and they are panicked and they are freaking. And they're all going, we don't know what to do because they've never been in a situation like this. They've never
planned for it.
They never planned for it. And so a leader emerges, Ed Harris is the actor, and he says, right, well, we've got to do this. We've got to do this. I want to get the engineers who designed it. I want to get people running simulations, and the whole dynamic of the team changes. And he finishes off with a line, and the line is, we haven't lost an American in space. Sure as hell not going to lose one on my watch. Failure is not an option. That's the line. Failure is not an option. And I love that line. And it's the reason why I show the clip. And I say to the audience, what if he said failure is not an option? Like, what characteristics would we need to have? What attitude would we need to show? We need to be resilient. We need to be problem solvers. We need to have a positive attitude. We need to have be good community. You could really come up with a big list if failure is not an option. Now, let me say, just by saying failure is not an option, it doesn't mean you're not going to fail.
Yeah.
What it means is you have an attitude of doing whatever it takes to get the outcome you want.
And do you know what I think? I just had this realization now. We spoke about the 6 out of 10 life, right?
Yes.
I think it's so easy to fail now because the consequences are so low for a lot of people in Australia specifically. So it's like, what if failure wasn't an option? Well, it doesn't matter because if I fail, I'm still at home. There's not really that huge consequences, whereas if the consequences are high and failure really is not an option.
There's a parachute now.
Yeah.
If there was no parachute, how would you go about it?
So I think now more than ever, this conversation is more important. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a funny conversation, bit of behind the scenes.
Yeah. And so this will be super relevant to anybody who's done Empower You. If anyone who hasn't, hopefully you'll enjoy this conversation, because what I'd love to do is share with you over the 20-year career that I've had running this seminar around the world, hundreds and hundreds of times to close to 30,000 participants. I want to share with you, I've just done a mind map here of some of the craziest things that have happened at Empower You, problems that have arisen, like things I didn't anticipate, and what we did to overcome them. Because I have to take on the attitude, failure is not an option. So let me think of a real basic one to start with. Look, I want to say problems like some small ones. Like one time, a huge part of what we do is audiovisual. So we have speakers, we have lighting to create the atmosphere and the energy of the weekend. It's kind of like a mini rock concert at times. And I remember one time in Townsville, like the speakers blew up, like they literally blew up, like smoke and sparks coming out of them. And we had to shut down the event for an hour, but we had to get speakers. So I got the assist team to make like whatever calls out to make, quickly rush out, get some speakers and replace them. We've had things where, I remember in New Zealand early on in my career, I was adamant that there were certain things that needed to happen. And one of them was I needed a stage. I'm not as precious these days about needing a stage. But back then, early on in my career, I felt as a presenter, I needed a bit more of an authority position. So we didn't have a stage at this event. I had a day before we were running the event. So I went to Bunnings, bought the material, and I built a stage because failure is not an option. Another one, this one, I'm warming up to the big ones. This one, I ran at a private school in Queensland. And so in running it in the school, they gave me their auditorium. Now, as you know, every time we I think there's about 8 to 10 sections over the course of the weekend. And in between each sections, there's a break. And when we come back from a break, we dance for 5-10 minutes. And the reason we dance is to get the energy up, get everyone out of their comfort zones, and get the participants into what we call a peak state of mind. So they're ready for learning. It's just a fun way of doing it. And of course, as the weekend progresses, everyone gets more into the dancing. Where at the first, people folding their arms, I want to do this. And by the end, they're like, we love dancing. So it's usually just people getting over their ego and the judgment of other people.
That's 2 things.
Which is a whole podcast in itself. So we were at this school and we play it loud. And what was happening is after halfway through every dance session, playing it loud, the volume would drop to 20%. So it'd be like, yeah. And then everyone would be like looking around. It got weird. We worked out that the venue had a breaker switch that if you hit a certain amount of decibels of a certain time,
right, yeah.
It's like a kill switch that would drop the power and you couldn't do anything about it. So we realized about 2 dance sessions in that this was going to be the entire weekend and the board break.
Oh, true, which is even longer.
It's long, 40 minutes. So we had to continue. So I had to get creative. Failure's not an option. So we talked about reframing on the podcast before. I thought, how can we reframe this? So I said to the audience after a dance session, because it was getting weird, right? People just stopped dancing and looking. It was just awkward. So I got up and I just owned it. I said, so did anyone noticing that the music is cutting in halfway through? They're like, yeah. Does anyone know why we're doing it? And I had someone put up their hand. Is it to get us out of our comfort zones? Exactly. And they're like, yeah, okay. And so then I said, what do you think you should do the next time the music cuts in half?
Get louder.
Get louder? Exactly. So for the rest of the program, as soon as it went half, everyone was like, yeah. And it became the thing. So we took a situation that we couldn't change and we reframed it to make it work for us.
Wow, that's a great example.
Yeah. That's a real funny one to stay with me. I've got 3 more. Obviously, more recent times, COVID restrictions. So our events are super touchy-feely. We hug, we dance, we sing, which are all kind of no-nos currently. And so we went into a couple of events recently that we either were going to cancel to protect the integrity of how we would normally run it, or we would run it under the current COVID restrictions and get creative. So we had to wear masks, which is really difficult because as a presenter, you're looking at people's facial expressions to read the audience and you couldn't do that. So that was difficult. We still could hug. That wasn't against the rules. We couldn't sing or couldn't dance. And dancing, as I've said already, is a huge part of the weekend. People don't want to dance at the start. Like if people knew there was dancing, they may not come.
Yeah.
But at the end of the weekend, if you say, what's your top 3 favorite things? Always the dancing. Because it builds rapport. Everyone feels a sense of community. And it's a celebration of the weekend.
And it's fun dancing.
It's super fun.
I've been parties, clubbing, and party dancing's way better.
Way better.
I remember actually after one of them parties, we went out to the club afterwards, and I was just like, whew, it was still good.
But it's not the same.
It's just everyone just kind of like, half does it, which you're at the club for 3 hours, so it makes sense. But in power, you're just like, go crazy.
You go for it because we create the space for you to feel comfortable and to be okay.
Yeah.
And you're not worried, is everyone going to judge me? Because you're saying everyone's doing it, so we just want to feel comfortable. So we couldn't dance. And a big part is the rapport and opening up. So what we did was we replaced the dancing with what we called Empower You Olympics.
And this was during the Olympics as well.
This was during the Olympics. So it was good. It was a really good timing in that respect. And so what we did was at the start of every section, we had this alarm that went, come into the room in 10, 9. So you had everyone run into the room, so high energy. And they got behind all the tables. Each team had a table. And we did, I don't know if you've heard of it, minute to win it games.
Yeah.
So you got 1 minute to do, like, for example, every team has a box of tissues. And you got 1 minute to pull out as many tissues with one hand, and the person who pulls out the most wins for their team. That kind of thing. Yeah,
like stupid little silly games.
And we did this because failure was an option. We wanted to protect the integrity of the outcome of the program, knowing full well we couldn't do something that was a huge element of it. So the final two, which one is worse? New Zealand or Singapore?
I think Singapore's worse.
Okay,
I would rather deal with the New Zealand situation.
You know what? You're right. I agree. Yeah, I agree totally. So New Zealand. So it was in Auckland. First time I'd been in Auckland, and we were running Empower in Auckland University. And we had our lighting set up, and we had a smoke machine. So we had our first dance session start off, and it was, everyone's really like not so into it, and that's okay. And, come on, let's go. Halfway through this dance session, I hear, and the dance music's playing loudly, I just hear this, and I'm like, is that an alarm? Okay, but at this point I'm like, well, it might be an alarm, but failure's not an option. I have to run this course.
Yeah.
So the dancing finished.
Also, keep in mind, these are kids. They can't just hop in a car and drive home.
That's right.
Like, there's literally, failure is not an option.
Yeah.
You have to look after them
We're
regardless.
not calling them all up and picking up. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And this was, and we're talking 15 years ago. So it
didn't have
wasn't
phones.
same with texting and all that. Like now we can just do all of that and we could blast out to every parent. Back then we were still sending out letters in the mail.
Right.
So it was a different time. And so the dancing finishes, everyone sits down and we start the event. This is starting the program. Hi, my name's Brent. Welcome to Empower You. Turn the person next to you. Say you're amazing, all that stuff. But I'm saying it over this,
So it happened like
it was still going.
as soon as you went in.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it happened like halfway
So
through.
the dancing starts, halfway through the dancing, the alarm goes and it's continuing. And it's continuing 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But I'm still presenting. And everyone's I said, I know there's an alarm, but let's just keep going. And about 15 minutes goes by and a security guard busts through the doors. And he goes, what are you doing? And I was like, what are you talking about? We're running an event. He goes, it's a fire alarm. The whole university is being evacuated. 2,000 people. Get out, get out,
my
get
God.
out. So I have to lead everyone out. And as we get out, there's thousands of people outside the front of the... Then the fire department comes in and I'm like, what do I do here? So I go over to a patch of grass, sit down, and I just continue the seminar. We're out in the sun. So here's what we're going to do this weekend. And I presented for about 15 minutes until the fire department came over to me and gave me a bill for $1,000 because we had set off the fire alarm because we'd had the smoke machine.
No.
So we had triggered the alarm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Far out.
So it was a $1,000 bill for that, but it was worth the story in the end. But it was failure's not an option. We just kept running the program regardless.
It's not even that big of a deal to be. It's a big event, but like big picture, once you enter day 2,
Oh yeah.
like who even cares? And it's exciting.
It was exciting, and it's a
yeah.
story
Yeah, it's
that
a
he
good
was
story.
telling 15 years later. The biggest.
This one would terrify me.
This was a doozy. This is a worst nightmare. I can't believe it happened, and how do we rescue it? Situation. So
I would shit myself.
yeah. So we've mentioned this process quite a few times throughout our other episodes we've
Yes.
done so far. And for those of you that have not attended Empower You, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but at the end of the day, if you come along and you know this, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
The main thing is that you play full out when you do it. That's
Yeah.
really
Well,
the
we
main
don't have to give them information. We can just tell them what they do.
Yeah, what they do essentially is we give everyone a piece of wood, a board, and on one side of the board they write down.
We don't have to tell them that. We can just say they just break a board.
Well, yeah.
I'm
no,
sure.
I want to say some of this because I think it's important for where I finish this story.
Yeah, okay.
But on one side of the board, they write down all the things that are negative in their lives. It's usually their past, whether it's the way they see themselves or past experiences. So, and that's a whole conversation, and it's very
This
deep.
whole thing takes 3 hours.
It takes 3 hours, yeah. And it's very emotional and very cathartic. But so on one side is negative in their past, and that other side of the board is positive in their future. So where they want to be, what's the best version of themselves, things like that. And it's very emotional. And then what we do is we then get everyone in a peak state and we get them to break the board. It's really one of the big highlights of the weekend. And it's the big shift for people emotionally. If people come along and go, what's all this about? Once they do that, it's like, wow, hugely impactful. I'm in Singapore. Packed audience, 200 people. We ran big parties in Singapore.
Far out.
And I'm on stage pre-framing the board break, saying, okay, we're going to get out this piece of wood. We're going to write on the wood. We're going to break it. I'm going to get teaching them principles. And as you said, it takes about an hour and a half before we get to it. As I start talking about it, so I've got 90 minutes before we actually have to break these boards. I start talking about it. My head, and this was a paid staff member, because in Singapore there was a whole engine behind the company there. She was our operations manager. She comes up to me. She says, Brent, we forgot to order the boards. And I'm like, what? like an Empower You without a board break?
I just don't understand how this happened right before the board break.
Look, I don't even know. I really, look, it's still to this day, I can't believe it even happened. How that got missed. And what's important to recognize as well is I fly in from Australia to run these programs. So I have a team that does all this. Whereas in Australia, I oversee a lot of these things. So I have to trust the team that's doing all this. I don't know where to source wood in Singapore.
Yeah, right.
So they say we don't have boards. So I have a minute meltdown. But then I remember Ed Harris, Apollo 13, failure's not an option. So I'm like, okay, can we get wood? We can't get 200 boards cut. They've got to be cut, certain specifics. So, okay, go to a karate shop. Let's go to a karate shop. So I won't go into the details, but essentially 45 minutes goes by and I get delivered 10 plastic rebreakable karate boards. I don't know if you've ever seen these before.
Right.
They're like, you snap them together like Meccano set and then they crack. They're hard to break.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good solution.
Yeah. They break and then we've got to put them together. So now I've got to reframe this to the audience. And I've got revisits in the room that have done the board break before.
Right. But right now you've got the physical part, but not the emotional part because you can't write on it.
Yeah. And they don't keep the board either. Yeah. Whereas the old, they keep the board. They've written on the board. It's symbolic. And we've got to put it back together. So it's like, hang on, I just broke it. Now you're putting it back together for the next person.
Yeah.
So here was our plan. And again, on stage, I've already talked about wooden boards. So I now know that we don't have wooden boards, but we've got something. So I now got to make this something sound amazing. So I get up on stage. I say, guess what? I've got some great news. Presupposition. I've got some great news. Okay, who's done Empower You before? And, I get 30% of the hands go up. Okay, something very exciting. Normally, we'd break the board. We'd use wood to break the boards. But I wanted something extra special tonight. And I was like, what? We don't have wooden boards. We've got karate boards.
Official karate.
Yeah. Because of the tone.
Yeah.
Karate boards. It meant, Now, there were some that were like, oh, because, but it's like, okay. So here's what we're going to do. You're not going to write on the board. You're going to write on a sheet of paper. So let's pass out the paper. And what we did, and it's...
You stuck the paper on them.
We wrote the paper. No, we had the paper and we had a board holder hold this plastic board. They'd break the board, and so they broke the board, the piece of paper with an assist, we'd rip it in half.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd be like, yeah. But then what we had to do is we had to then run outside with the board and put it together with no one seeing.
Oh, so I didn't realize.
We didn't want them to see us constantly re-putting it together symbolically. So it was a huge logistical challenge to like rip, run out, get it together, come back in, go again. But we did it.
Yeah.
And it worked. Look, was it as powerful a board break as normal? It probably wasn't. But did we get over the line and get an outcome? Absolutely. And so the whole point of all these conversations, really, I mean, it's a bit of behind the scenes. It's some very funny stories of Empower You. But the value of having a simple mindset going into something, the failure is not an option. Because when you do that, you immediately ask yourself all the questions you need to squeeze the juice out of the opportunity to make sure that if you don't get the outcome you want, you know that you've left nothing on the table. So for me, we don't have boards, but we've got to do this. Okay, can we go get something to break? Or like, okay, the sound's not going to work. Well, let's make it a game and we'll say, let's just go louder when the sound's not working. Okay, the alarm's going off, but I still need to run the program because I need to get to tonight in this time. Let's just keep facilitating the program. So it's just do whatever it takes to get the outcome. And it's so often, if you do the little bit more, everyday combat over time, that's what's going to change your life.
And that's the whole thing. If you improve 1% every day, you've improved 365% per year.
Yeah.
Compounded over 10 years.
Yeah.
Look who you are.
And here's the other thing as well. Coming back to these stories, and this is a reflection of life, by making this effort, that immediately positions me to the audience that whether we get it right or not, they know that I've done everything I can to get the outcome for them. They know that I've done everything for them, so therefore they raise their game.
And you can sleep, you can go to bed that night knowing you gave it 100%.
Yeah.
That was my thing. Like when I came from New Zealand, I moved from New Zealand to Australia. I've been playing football my whole life and I was pretty good as a kid. And then I had some mates that had a team. I was like, yeah, I'll join your team. And I was a lot better than them. They were in like C grade or something. I was like, I'll just play for fun. I'm not here to play seriously. And so I was captain and I didn't care so long as I gave it 100%. There were guys who were really not that good. They were quite uncoordinated. But there's one guy who's a good mate of mine still, and he always gave it 100%. He wasn't naturally that great at the game. But that's all I care, 100%. Because everyone's got I don't know. It pissed me off when even if someone played better than this person, but they only gave 80%. I'm like, nah. Yeah. This guy, he's given 100%.
Yeah.
And so, I think it applies with so many aspects in life. Well, I guess in Empower You's case, 110%.
Yeah. Well, let's finish off this episode with a movie recommendation, and I'm going to get into a habit of giving movie recommendations. That's my thing.
I think I know what movie.
Rudy.
Yeah.
So Rudy, RUDY, is based on the true story of a guy in the 1970s whose dream, he had no athletic ability, but his dream was to play for Notre Dame football team, the gridiron team. I won't say any more. It's on Netflix at the moment. It may have gone off by the time you watch this episode. It's hard to find because it was only released in the US. But that movie is the ultimate example of failure's not an option. And like you said, regardless of whether you got the skill set, the attitude and effort you put in will set you apart. Watch that movie. It was regarded for many years as the #1 motivational movie of all time. Highly recommend it. Check it out.
And is that the one with the scene where he's holding the guy on his back and crawling?
No.
Oh, that's a different movie.
I know that. That's the death crawl.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a gridiron movie where he gets in a blindfolded.
Yeah.
He's like, go again, Brock.
Yeah,
Brock,
like,
go again, go again.
Yeah.
You went the whole field.
Yeah, he's like,
That's great scene.
Great
the
scene.
movie's not so good, but that scene is unbelievable.
Yeah, the scene's so good. I haven't seen Rudy because the power got knocked out at camp.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll have to watch that. But there's some Empower You stories. I thought it'd be fun to go behind the scenes. We'll do more behind the scenes specifically for people who've attended the program.
Yeah.
Share some funny stories. Share what happens with presenting.
Crazy moments.
Yeah, if you haven't listened, we just did an episode on assists and behind the scenes for assisting and why that's so valuable. But there's so much that happens, which is so exciting because one of the 6 human needs is variety. Any other final thoughts when it comes to this whole failure's
No, just failure's not an option.
Yeah.
Such a simple but powerful motto to take on board.
I think understand your work ethic can beat someone who's got natural talent.
Yes.
I think if you're not naturally good at something, if you work at it, you can outdo someone who's just naturally good.
Yeah.
Because usually the people who are naturally good won't have as much of a work ethic because they don't need to.
And if you've got the two of them,
oh man, that's Ronaldo. That's Messi.
That's Ronaldo. That's Elon Musk.
Yeah.
That's that's like all the top people. It's because they've got the talent and the work ethic combined.
That's Michael Jordan. You see those documentaries and it's like, they're naturally talented, but they work.
Yeah, they do the work for sure.
Awesome. Well, that was a great episode.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Empower You podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. For more information on our live events, please head to www.empoweryou.com.au. We look forward to having you join us again for the next episode of the Empower You podcast.